Hi everyone. Today I wanted to read you guys a story called Uncle Andy's. This is the story about the artist Andy Warhol. I know that some of you guys have heard me talk about him because some of you have noticed the Andy Warhol sticker I have on my water bottle. And you've said, wow, Miss Laura, you must really like soup if you have a sticker of soup on your water bottle. And I've explained that no, I actually really like the artist Andy Warhol. So this book is about his nephew who gets to go to visit him. His whole family packs up their car and they go to visit their crazy Uncle Andy. You will see just how much Andy Warhol loved soup cans. There's one page in this book where there are soup can boxes stacked to the ceiling. I hope that you guys like reading this book. I hope that you guys like learning a little bit about Andy Warhol. Let me know what you think. This book is called Uncle Andy's by James Warhola. Looking back on those days, the one thing I remember most is thinking that my dad had the best darn job in the world. Our yard was always so much more fun than anyone else's in the neighborhood. My oldest brother was already away at college, but there were still 6 of us left at home. Dad had lots of jobs, but for now, he was mostly a junk man. Sometimes the neighbors complained that our yard looked more like a junkyard. The real junkyard was about a mile away on a dirt road. It was up a really steep hill, and it had everything. Old cars, old pop machines, old airplane engines, you name it. It was there on the hill. Dad's job was to take things apart and separate the metals: aluminum, copper, brass, and steel. When there was enough, he loaded the truck and hauled it to another junkyard. Dad was always bringing home junk, and sometimes he'd say to me, "Now, Jamie, this can make really good art." Then he'd put a bunch of it together in an interesting way. Mom was always yelling to Dad, "For Pete's sake, Paul, quit junking up the house." And, "Paul, when you going to get rid of this stuff anyhow?" But we liked playing in the junk. One day, Dad came home from work and announced, "It's time to visit Bubba and Uncle Andy in the big city. We'll leave tomorrow morning." Oh, we were so excited. It was not often that we got to visit our grandma and our famous artist uncle in New York City. We had a lot of getting ready to do. Dad had work to do on the car. Mary Lou and Eva had to make sandwiches. Georgie and I had to pack the car, and little Maddie and Marty, well, they didn't do much. They were just in the way. The next morning, Mom woke us up extra early, and we were finally on our way. We saw nothing but cornfields and cow pastures at first. But then slowly, we counted the 7 tunnels that it would take us to get there. And when we came to the last tunnel, we all perked up. All of the sudden, the world became very different. There were giant buildings, honking taxis, and people going every which way. Dad slowly wove his way uptown to Uncle Andy's. There we were, all 8 of us standing in front of a huge black door, ringing the bell. After a long wait, the door unlatched and slowly opened. Uncle Andy peered out for a minute and then let out a long, "Oh." Dad always thought it was best not to phone ahead, so that it would always be a surprise. It certainly worked. Uncle Andy was always very, very surprised. He showed us in, and we made our way to the kitchen where our grandmother was. Bubba drowned us with wet kisses as she always did, and fixed us a dinner of salamis, breads, and cheeses. Soon all the chattering and eating came to an end, and it was time for sleep. Uncle Andy showed us to our makeshift beds. I slept on the top floor on a propped-up old door covered with cushions. In the morning, I noticed that I was surrounded by towers of soup boxes. I thought Uncle Andy and Bubba sure ate a lot of soup, but that wasn't it at all. Uncle Andy didn't buy those soup boxes. He built them out of wood, and he painted each and every one. They were art, and really important too, because Uncle Andy told us not to touch any of it. Dad always remembered to bring Uncle Andy something interesting from the junkyard. This time, it was a giant magnet with a bunch of bolts stuck to it. Uncle Andy peered over his glasses at it real carefully, and after a long pause, he said, "Oh, gee, wow." Then we knew that he really liked it. He decided that it should go right by the front door. Uncle Andy had 25 cats, all named Sam. They were always hiding in a house that was just like a giant amusement park. It was perfect for hide-and-go-seek and racing. It wasn't long before the 6 of us were flying up and down the stairs and through all of the rooms like a band of wild monkeys. Uncle Andy thought everything was art in some way or another. That's why his house was so fantastic. Each of the rooms was filled to the brim with all sorts of neat things. There were always new things to see. Right in the middle of the entryway, there was a giant piece of crumpled metal. It looked like it might have gotten stuck there and couldn't go any further. Uncle Andy explained to us, "Oh, that's a piece of fabulous art by a very famous artist." We were all impressed. Dad had a lot of that back at home. Uncle Andy was always making art. We loved watching him paint in his studio. He made regular stuff like soup cans, pop bottles, and money that looked like real art. Mary Lou and Eva just love his giant pictures of Elvis Presley. Mom, always aware of unnecessary clutter, asked, "Gee, Andy, when are you going to get rid of this stuff?" Uncle Andy, startled, said, "Oh, no. This is all art. It's going to be worth a lot of money." Mom didn't really understand art. With all of the commotion that we caused, Uncle Andy decided it might be better to put us all to work. It wasn't long before each of us had different jobs. He knew I liked to do art, so he let me help him with his giant paint-by-number sailboat painting. At night, Uncle Andy went out to parties to see other famous people. In the morning, we patiently sat by his door, waiting for it to open so he could tell us all about who he had met. Once Maddie surprised Uncle Andy by going into his room a little too early. He let out a shriek because he didn't have his wig on yet. Of course, we all knew Uncle Andy was bald, just like Dad and Uncle John. Uncle Andy had wigs for every occasion. Messy wake-up wigs, multicolored afternoon wigs, and formal wigs for parties. He had given Dad his old wigs, and back at home, we had a lot of fun with them. Each day was a chance to see something new. We especially loved hiding in the studio when Uncle Andy had important art people over to talk about his work. They would all huddle around the paintings, pointing and peering. They really thought Uncle Andy was onto something. I knew his paintings were super neat, and it made me want to do my own art when I got home. Finally, Dad announced, "It's time to get on home." That night we packed up all of our things. Again, Mary Lou and Eva made the sandwiches. Bubba added a few salamis. Uncle Andy was on his way out the door with one of his soup can paintings when I told him that we had to leave in the morning. He replied, Oh, really? I have to go out to sell this picture to a man waiting at the corner. You know, he's the taxi cab king. He really likes my work. Then I'm going to a party. Oh, so have a fabulous trip, Jamie. Bye." We went to bed early, and before I knew it, Mom was wiggling my toes and saying, "Time to get up." Bubba helped us with our things, and we trudged out into the dark morning. At the foot of the steps, there was a bunch of boxes that Uncle Andy had left for us all. A lot of neat stuff, including art supplies for me. Bubba drowned us with those wet kisses as we got into the car, and soon we were weaving our way downtown to go through the first tunnel. We all fell asleep wondering about our next trip back to Uncle Andy's. As we got older, we made many more trips back to that faraway city, and Dad continued bringing interesting junk from the junkyard, all for Uncle Andy. I really liked doing art, and I learned that art is something that is all around us all of the time. In the corner of my bedroom, I made an art studio of my own. And although Mom fretted and fussed as usual over what a mess it always was, she didn't make me clean it up. She even woke me up early on Saturdays to drive me to art class. You know, I think Mom is finally starting to understand what art is all about.